Hi there, and welcome to the August UK House Price Index for Scotland update. So, if you've seen this before, it basically gives you an overall understanding of what is happening year on year in regards to the property market in Scotland. So, we cover some main highlights for you, give you insights into your regional geographics, and basically discuss how it's better for you in your area. It gives you an idea of whether you should be potentially looking to move or actually just understanding this year advantage that you've achieved by owning your property and what value you may or may not have added. So what I'm going to do is just cover the economic statement, just some real highlights, and then we'll drill into the numbers. If you are interested in stats, there's lots of graphs and stats that I'm going to be sharing with you. By all means, feel free to click on the links, read the full post. You can really drill into your details there. But likewise, if you've got any questions, you can post them just now or later, and I will absolutely endeavour to come back to you. So we're going to have a look at the changes since the last report that I did in July. So the average house price in Scotland has increased by 4% in the 12 months from August 24 to August 2025. It's estimated at the moment the average property values in Scotland are £194,000. That remains unchanged in the estimated 12 months from July, and is above actually the average UK house price annual inflation of 3%. So that's a really positive trend that we're seeing month on month, year on year as well. So that's really important for the property market and everything that it entails, and all of the supply chain, of course, that supports the property market. People feel that it's just about houses, but actually it's not. It actually services all of the property chain, all of the supply chain, from home movers to carpet fitters to plumbers to electricians to stores that are selling furniture. It really does impact everyone, and also the community benefits from it. So actually to see it in a positive light is a really great thing, because it's making sure then that actually all of the communities in these locations are benefiting from a strong property market. So on a non-seasonally adjusted basis, the average house price in Scotland increased by 0.3%. What that basically means is that there's a bit of a delay in regards to the land registry information that comes through. So whilst this is the August report, the actual concluded parts of property generally are about 3 months behind. So they work on a number that they foresee it will be, and then they adjust it as they need to adjust it. So again, not really much of an adjustment there, which is fantastic. So really strong performance. What we then look at, and again, we'll drill into this more, but I'm just giving you the overview just now. We then look at what types of properties are actually faring the best, because again, that's important to you, isn't it, in regards to if you're thinking of moving, and also actually if you're not, then just what value have you perhaps added. So what we are seeing in Scotland at the moment is the semi-detached houses had the highest annual percentage change out of all property types. They had an increase of 6.7%. 6.7% year on year, which is fantastic. If you compare that as well to the average properties of all properties at 3.3, that is really bucking that trend on the semi-detached property. They're great houses, aren't they? Because you just get so much space. You generally also have property areas to the side as far as your plot and your land goes. So you usually have your garden to the front, you'll have garden or driveway to the side and garden to the rear. So you just get so much bang for your buck, and they're really nice properties inside, generally quite spacious as well. So it's not surprising actually that we're seeing the semi-detached property is really performing above the average of all other types. So that's really strong performance for them. And the average semi-detached property at the moment is actually faring ahead of the average Scottish price of the 194 to actually 222,000 is what your average semi-detached in Scotland is performing like. So that again, a really strong overperformance for semi-detached houses. Your flats and maisonettes are the ones at the lowest annual percentage changes, but again, still an improvement. It's still a positive at 1.5%, and your average maisonette or apartments flat is actually selling at £136,000. These numbers are really important to understand as well, because this isn't what they've gone to market at. It's not necessarily what they may have achieved as far as home report goes. It's actually what did people pay for these houses. So that's the numbers that you're gaining from here. What does it mean for Scotland as a whole, and how actually all of the areas are performing? So in Scotland, 30 out of 32 of the local authorities showed an increase in the average house price performance in the 12 months to August. So again, that's the highest annual percentage change has been seen in Renfrewshire, with the average house prices increasing by 12.1%. 12% in Renfrewshire. If you've got a house there, you've done extremely well, haven't you? And that's from August, and the average property value there is now at £165,000. The lowest annual change was City of Aberdeen, where the average house prices decreased by 4.3% in the 12 months to August. And the average City of Aberdeen property is now selling for £141,000. That's quite surprising, isn't it, when you think of all of the business industry that is in that city? You would anticipate that that would be higher. So it's interesting to see what's going to happen there. Obviously, there was some news the other day with Petrofac and what that might mean for some of the employees that are working for them. They basically host 2,000 employees. They've got a big HQ in Aberdeen as well. So it'll be interesting to see if that actually does any negative impact to the property values there as well. So again, for the city, out of 30 of the 32 areas performing positively, that's one of the two that didn't. So interesting to see how that's going to fare, but to decrease year on year by 4.3%, certainly something for the people of Aberdeen to be having a wee look at and focusing on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just share some stats with you rather than you kind of listening to me talk, and I'll let you see the graphs. If you give me 1 second, then I'll just pop that up. So let me just find this one. So for me, this is a really good one. And pretty much what this is doing is summarising everything that I've said to you. So the headline stats for August are that the average house price in Scotland across the 12 months from August 24 to 25 is £194,000. Actually, interestingly, from when I did it in July, from July on to July, it was 192,000. So it has gone up on average by £2,000 just in that additional month. Also, the average annual price change in a property as a whole, as far as percentages are concerned, was 4%. So again, a really strong performance across the whole of Scotland there at 4% improvement. And when I looked back to what the stats were in July, actually July to July, so July 24 to July 25 was 3.3%. So that's 0.7% increase from the August to the August. So it's amazing the difference that month has made. It's like Bob always say, though, you can never judge anything on a week, a month. You know, you've got to look at the whole picture. So when you look at the annual picture, that's a really strong improvement, isn't it? Monthly price change on a property in Scotland was 0.3%. Across the place in July, that was 0.5%, but still a positive performance. But the index figure shows that actually, when we look back to 23, 24, 25, properties have actually improved in value by 110.7%. August 24 to August 25. And when we look at July of 24 to July 25, it was 109.7%. So interesting to see that that has still continued to grow and to thrive. We're then going to look at, let me just remove that one for you, and I'm just going to share another screen with you. 1 second. Because this is an interesting one as well. This is actually giving you the values in the locations. So again, that's really important for you to see. Let me get those over. Here we have it. Let me just share this with you. So what you can see here, really difficult for you to see it because it's quite small and I can't zoom in on it. So again, as I mentioned earlier, if you click on the link, you'll be able to view this yourself and read the whole article. But basically what this is showing you is the breakdown in the annual price changes across all of the regions within Scotland. So if we look at the low numbers of sales transactions, some local authorities actually, you've seen that most of the authorities are increasing, so that's a strong position. But geographically, if we look at Aberdeenshire, which is not Aberdeen City, of course, Aberdeenshire's property values, which is the first one, which is again going to be difficult for you to see, but August 2025, the Aberdeen property values on average are 204,791, which has gone up at 0.3% against August of 24. If we then go to, say, the City of Dundee, for instance, so actually the City of Dundee has decreased slightly too. So Aberdeen City and Dundee City are the two areas that have performed where it hasn't improved. So City of Dundee, the August 2025 average property is 143,238 versus August of 24, which was 142,265. That's a decrease at 4.3%. But when you look at that number, it's not a massive poundage difference, but it does show that it has decreased. If we then go to, say, the City of Edinburgh, that was one of the strong performing ones. So they have actually improved in price by 5.8%. The average property in the City of Edinburgh is 295,653 versus the previous August at 279,316. When you look at it in that terms, I know we're talking percentages, but that's still a £15,000 increase in value on those types of properties on average in that location. So that's a really positive trend for people that are obviously working and living in those locations. It gives them a great idea of what their property values are going to be, and allows them really to make some choices in life as well. They may think about moving if that's what they want to do, or relocating. We're seeing quite a few people. I'm based in Fife at the moment, and we see quite a few people from Edinburgh coming over to Fife just because the style of lifestyle and the cost of living is so much easier for people to afford in some instances. If we then look at, say, the City of Glasgow has performed similar to actually the City of Edinburgh. So it's interesting that the cities are kind of split. So Aberdeen and Dundee have negatively performed as far as percentages go, but Edinburgh and Glasgow have improved. And Glasgow sitting at an increase of 5.3%. So the average property there, 190,165 versus August of 24, 180,521. We're then going to jump to Fife. Fife, again, performing really strongly. The average property in Fife at the moment is 175,980 against the previous August of 24, 166,752. That's an improvement of 5.5%. So really strong improvement there in Fife as well. And you pretty much see that all the way through. I've mentioned the ones that didn't perform. The biggest jump out, as we heard in the stats at the beginning on the economic statement, was Renfrewshire, which has improved by 12.1%. Average affordability property-wise there is 165,431. So really well performed as far as the growth goes. I'm then going to show you what that looks like on the map, just to give you a bit of an idea of how that fares. It's sometimes easier to see it in that way, isn't it? Give me one little second and I will just share that with you. Because again, it's good for you to see actually what does that look like in real terms as far as geographics go. There we go on the map there. So again, you can see it on the map here, and the visual is better. Obviously, you can look at it hard copy if you click on the link and you'll be able to read through that. But it gives you a flavour of really just how everything is performing in regards to regionals. So what we're looking at here is your average price points. So your deep reds, so that's your ones down here in the kind of Edinburgh areas, and then can cross into Stirling, etc., and Kinross. They're at the average price of 230 or greater. You then come into, say, your yellows. Your yellow areas are your kind of coming into your Glasgows and your Borders and your past Lothian areas. They're around about your 150 to your 169. If we look at Fife, which was in your orange area, which was here, that's 170,000 to 189. And you can see that just from the stats that I shared with you as well. So interested to see that in August, the most expensive area to purchase a property was East Renfrewshire, where the average cost was £298,000. In contrast that to the lowest priced areas, that one was Inverclyde, so that's across here, and that was 117,000. So it just shows you all throughout Scotland there's varying degrees of actual value of property and what people are willing to spend on them. You're getting various property types there as well, so it's interesting to see what that looks like as far as the grid goes. Especially, I feel, the fact that people are now working from home. You can pretty much live anywhere that you want to live, can't you? Because if you're working from home, you're not necessarily commuting on a daily basis. You may be commuting a couple of times a month. So it's good to see where actually your affordability may lay, and actually a bit of a change in lifestyle as well. If you look at affordability from Edinburgh to Fife, which you can get on the train at Leven, say, or Cameron Bridge or Kirkcaldy, you're literally within an hour to 40 minutes from it. So you could work in Edinburgh and have great affordability in the Fife location and have a different type of lifestyle, can't you? So that's really something that I think is really good to show with those stats, and it's easier on the iFeed to actually see how that would work. I'm then going to just look at what the actual average price change per property type looked like, and let me just share that with you. Give me one wee second. So if we see there what are your property types, you can see that the detached properties, the average detached property for August 2025 was £356,071 against August of 2024, where it was 337,549. That's an improvement of 5.5%. So a really strong performance. But then, as we mentioned earlier, the semi-detached property, your average semi-detached is currently sitting at 221,903 versus your August of 2024 at £208,047. That's an improvement of 6.7% across the performance of a semi-detached property. So again, even if you're not thinking of moving, it's great to understand the value that you may have added. And this is average values as well. So this isn't taking into account any changes you may have had. Semi-detached properties are fabulous, aren't they? Because you've got all that area to the side in general. So there's a great opportunity for extensions, etc. So this is just what we're saying as average. You then look at your terrace properties, again, really affordable, below the Scottish average. They're sitting at 178,793 against a value of 2024 at 170,312. So that's a 5% improvement. Your flat or masonette has improved by 1.5%. So they're currently sitting at 136,352 versus 134,352. So they've jumped a couple of thousand as well. So that's a positive thing. So all in all, what we're seeing is the average property price in Scotland is 193,786 versus August of 2024, where it sat at 186,285, gives you that overall 4% improvement that we saw. So again, really interesting to see actually where it might have improved for you and what difference that's made for you as well. So really positive to see that, isn't it? When we look at sales volume as well, what we like to do is look at sales volume per authority. And what we're meaning by that is, what does the concluded properties look like? So it doesn't really matter what is coming to market, it's about what actually then did conclude and what did that look like versus previous years. So if we look at Aberdeenshire, and this is interesting actually because there's been a big jump in Aberdeenshire, and that could have been where the knock-on effect has come from in the actual property prices, because we've seen that drop at 4.2% in property values in the city of Aberdeen. But when we look at Aberdeenshire as a whole, what we're seeing is 424 properties came to market and concluded on June of 2025. There's a slight delay because of the land registry, although this is the August report. We can't get July's and August numbers just yet because there is that couple of months delay. So we're looking at 424 properties in Aberdeenshire in 2025 versus 294 in June of 2024. If we then look at Angus, so that's where your Dundee would sit, for instance, that's looking at 208 versus 195 properties. If we then go to your city of Aberdeen, 510 properties versus 418. So that's an additional 100 properties came to market. So that may be the driver of why we've then suddenly seen that drop at 4.2% as far as values are concerned. So certainly something to keep an eye on, I think. If we then look at the city of Edinburgh's transactions are sitting at 981 on June of 2025 versus 1,088 in June of 2024. Now that's an interesting one as well, because we've seen the city of Edinburgh has been one of the ones where it had the biggest boost in regards to annual value. So there's less supply, demand is still there, of course. So that's where you're seeing that growth coming from in those property values in the city of Edinburgh. Not a surprise to see that actually. Same if you look at city of Glasgow. So again, that was one of the strong performing cities as far as percentages go. They were 980 properties that were listed and sold versus 960. If we then jump to Fife, so transactions concluded in Fife, June of 25, 691 properties versus June of 24 at 637. So again, overperforming, and we're seeing that growth there in Fife areas as well. So interesting to see that the growth is over 5% in Fife, but actually more properties have concluded as well. So there obviously is really good demand in here, and there's good affordability as well, isn't there? The average property price in Fife was 178 versus the UK Scottish average of 194. So that's great affordability, and that's maybe why we're seeing those increased transactions as well. If we then say jump to Perth and Kinross, we're sitting at 293 properties versus 274. So it's interesting to see how that's all flowing through. But overall across Scotland, there was 9,420 properties from June of 24 to June of 25. That's what sold versus the previous year, which was 8,607. So that's about 800 additional houses across the whole of Scotland that have sold in that same timeline 1 year later. So it's interesting to see how that fares. If we then look at sales volumes of what's coming to market, again, in June of 21 was 11,184. Not surprising, was it? Because that came after pandemic and everyone was rushing to move. Then we look at June of 22, that comes down to 8,695. So that chops off there about 3,000. Then June of 23, it climbs back up to just under 9,500. June of 24 down to 8,600, and then June of 25, as I mentioned earlier on, 9,420. So strongly performing at the moment as well, which is really interesting to see. If we then look at the new build properties, because it's always interesting to see what a new build property is averaging as far as price point goes versus your resold properties. If we look at your new build properties, the average price for a new build property in June of 2025 was 336,406. That's a monthly change of 4.4% and a whopping annual change of 21.3%. 21.3%. That's an incredible amount of positive change, isn't it? Not so great if you're trying to buy one, of course, but certainly if you're moving from new to new, then you know it's knock-on effect, isn't it? You benefit when you sell, you benefit when you buy. But it's interesting to see that those properties annually have gone up by 21.3%. In particular, when you compare that to existing resold properties. What we mean by that is property that's been owned before and someone else is moving in. So resold properties, the average price is 178,266 versus 336,000 on a new build. That's nearly double. That's a huge contrast, isn't it? And it all comes down to the eco-friendliness, I guess, of new build properties and the real high standards that they have to achieve. And there's obviously cost implications to that, from solar panels, from heat pumps. It really makes a difference, doesn't it? But the annual change on a new build at 21% versus the annual change on a resold at 4%. It's a huge adjustment difference, isn't it? So it's interesting to see where maybe you sit in that pot. It'd be good to get your thoughts on that, actually, see if you found that when you've been going to look at properties, if that's actually what you're seeing. Buyer status for me is always a really, really important one. Your buyer status really gives you a good idea as a seller where your buyer's coming from and roughly how much they're spending as well. And that really gives you a good guide then to how you potentially promote your property if you're taking it to market. So what we're seeing for first-time buyers at the moment, the average price that a first-time buyer is spending in August of 2025 is 158,954. That's an annual change in a positive way for 3.6%. If we then look at your former owner occupiers, so someone who's bought before, their average spending 241,915, and that's an annual change of 4.4%. Now you'd expect to see that because your first time buyers generally are your professionals, you've maybe not got your family yet, and you're kind of just starting out on the property ladder. Your former owner occupiers tend to be either upsizing or downsizing. So it's not a surprise to see that those prices are higher. It's about £60,000 of a difference, isn't it? So you would anticipate seeing that. But the interesting part as well is actually the funding status. So those people that are buying, and where are their funds coming from? And again, this is a real big difference in regards to your plan for your selling. You're maybe thinking, actually, I don't want a chain. That can be quite overpowering if you don't really have a full understanding of how that works. And so you may think, well, actually, I would rather just have a cash buyer. It's going to be so much easier for me as a seller. This is an interesting one for you to have knowledge on, because actually that will drive you in your decision making, and your agent should be driving you as well in regards to the advice that they give you, the information share that they give you, so that you can make a strong, sound decision. Because your actual average price in August of 25 for your people that were cash buyers, the average amount that they're spending is 178,887. I'll say that again. Cash buyers are spending on average in Scotland 178,887 on a property. So if you're sitting on a property that is valued more than that and you're hanging on for the cash buyer, I'm not saying they're not out there, they may well be out there, because this is just an average, but it might just give you a bit of a thought process in regards to how you progress with your sale. And again, if you're needing some advice, just reach out to us. We'd be more than happy to help. Your person alternatively, who is borrowing on a mortgage to purchase a property, on average are spending 201,595,000. So that you can see that that's a big difference in regards to the two prices. It's about a £30,000 jump from a cash buyer to a mortgage payer as well. But again, it's still an annual improvement. So it is improving, it is increasing. So the cash buy at 178,000, that's an annual change of 3.5%. And your mortgage at 201,595 is an annual change of 4.3%. So it'll be interesting to see how that works out. Interestingly, we've seen the news, obviously, with the Office of National Statistics and putting out the information in regards to inflation. So inflation currently sitting way above what they were anticipating, certainly more than anyone was anticipating, certainly nowhere near the 2% that the government are trying to achieve. So when you think that the government are trying to achieve 2% and we're currently sitting at 4.8%, I guess the one benefit is that food inflation did come down slightly. Food inflation was sitting at 5%. It's now come down to 4.5%. But I think we're all being impacted with that, aren't we, in regards to what we're seeing over the counter when we're getting our shopping. I know for me, when you're filling your basket, it's much more expensive, isn't it? And that's a big hit for families. So again, that's interesting how that may fare in regards to what that may impact in interest changes reviews. So Bank of England, as you know, when they last met, everything stayed as was. It stayed at 4.5%. What we're now seeing is that actually they are re-meeting again on the 6th of November. So it'll be interesting to see if that then comes further down. So, you know, we didn't see a percentage drop. It'd be great to see if that would go under the 4%. Whether that will happen or not, no one's really aware of what's going to happen here because there's not been a review for 2 months. The next review for the review, as I said, is the 6th of November. Be interesting to really see how that bows and makes a difference to you as a potential person who's thinking that you would like to go out and mortgage a property. So 6th of November is when the Bank of England and the Monetary Fund meet. We'll see if there is an announcement on a reduction. Let's hope so, because actually it does affect inflation. Inflation's sitting at 3.8%. It should be sitting at 2%. It's almost double. We saw food inflation, which was fantastic to see, come from 5% down to 4.5%, but still a huge amount than we would anticipate. So look out for that announcement from the Bank of England on the 6th of November. They generally meet about midday, so at some point early afternoon, we should see the announcement of whether interest rates will stay the same or whether they'll reduce them further. But it would be great if we could see them going under that 4% again, wouldn't it? But actually, even without that, we've seen a really strong performance in the property market. You've seen the average property price go up. You've seen the annual percentage of property prices going up. And you've seen the transaction volumes going up as well. And everything is performing well in most of the areas. 30 out of 32 areas within Scotland have positively performed. So that's a really strong place to be as well. As I mentioned, you can click on the link, you can read through the posts, you can ask any questions, and we'd be more than happy to come back to you. And for now, that's us for our monthly update, and it's Perrie at Fife Properties TV. Take care. Bye-bye.